Imagine living in a nice home you recently bought and having a stable job at a company you've been with for 5 years. Life may not be magnificent, but it's quite pleasant. Then one day, you're fired from your job and you only have enough savings to cover 3 months of expense. What would you do? Would you feel overwhelmed and start panicking because you'll soon run out of money to cover your mortgage, which means you lose your home, so you look for a job right away, and maybe after several days of no response, you find yourself sending application to every company with a job opening, whether it suits you or not? Or would you feel like nothing serious is happening because you're sure you're going to find a job before you run out of money? So you casually look for jobs that you really like and only apply here and there when you feel like, because you know things will turn out fine. When we face a problem, some of us are more optimistic, some of us are more pessimistic. The culvert world reflects this. On the right, here is somebody holding toilet rolls because they're panicking about supplies. They represent the more pessimistic group. On the left, we got a party going on because some people refuse to believe that anything serious is happening. They represent the overly optimistic group. So there are two main groups of people, and their views are polarized. But there is a smaller third group of people who are taking the virus seriously and at the same time not being afraid. That is a good place to be. It's tempting to think that this small group of people are balancing between the two in the green circle, but that's not exactly true. A person in the green circle may say something like, "I won't initiate any social gathering, but if a friend invites me, I'll join." That's just an example. They may behave differently. That small group of people, however, doesn't behave like this because they take the virus seriously, which means they follow regulations and take the precautions to reduce the chances of catching and spreading the virus. They are essentially taking the good stuff from the two extremes and make it their own. Let me explain. Good stuff from the yellow group of people who are in fear is that they take solid actions to stop the virus from spreading. Bad thing is that fear compromises our immune system. Good stuff from the red group of people who are nonchalant is that they're not afraid, they're feeling okay. Bad thing is that their actions make it difficult to contain the virus. Taking the good stuff from both sides, this small group of people in the blue circle take solid actions to stop the virus from spreading, and they feel okay. They're not living in fear. If we compare the group of people in the blue circle up here and the group in the green circle at the bottom, the perfect example of a person in the blue circle would take 100% action to be safe, and they'd feel 100% okay. A person down there in the green circle who is standing right in the middle would take 50% action to be safe, and they'd feel 50% okay. Our natural inclination is to think that we're up here in the blue circle. It may be true or it may not be. In this session, we're going to deconstruct what it takes to be in this empowered position so we can consciously choose to be up here whenever we face a problem. We can enter this position by letting our head and our heart cooperate. What I call head-heart thinking. Head-heart thinking is a new way of thinking and living that allows us to harness our human potential because our head and our heart work in synergy and we escape the limitations of polarity. When we do head-heart thinking, we can face problems with poise. The concept of head-heart thinking comes from recipe 5 of my book, 8 Recipes for Life. In the book, head-heart thinking is referred to as head-heart dualism. 8 Recipes for Life is a self-help book with 8 life lessons that help people live more happily and find more fulfillment. It's written by my partner Pete and myself. Together, we're known as PETLO. Since the publication of 8 Recipes for Life, PETLO have evolved into a hypnotherapy and self-help shop. Apart from the book, we offer downloadable hypnosis products that help people deal with all sorts of problems, from COVID support to stress to weight loss to confidence issues. They're available on our website, petlo.co.uk. Going back to the opening scenario of losing the job with savings to cover 3 months' expense, a head-heart thinker may calm themselves down from the shock of being fired and then start considering what options are available. Are there any costs that can be cut? What jobs are available out there? What skills do you have? What are the options for you? Should you continue down the path of finding a similar job, or should you take this opportunity to start something else? Maybe you can discuss with your partner and see what changes are acceptable for the both of you. Maybe you really wanted to go into business all these years but have played it safe, and now is a good time to give it a try because your friends and family are happy to support you to implement your business idea. When we do Headheart thinking, we're not panicking, we're not reckless, we are resourceful. So, what is Headheart thinking? To answer that question, we need to first look at its counterpart, polarity thinking. There are two types of polarity thinking: negative polarity thinking and positive polarity thinking. Negative polarity thinking is where our head and our heart are both negative. This results in being pessimistic, represented by the group who is living in fear. Positive polarity thinking is where our head and our heart are both positive. This results in being overly optimistic, represented by the group who is partying. What causes positive polarity thinking? We're either overconfident or we underestimate the problem. Sometimes we have something bigger than us that we believe in who will take care of us. It could be the law of attraction or other higher power. The story about the man who refused help illustrates as well. The man lives in a village next to a river. It's a very rainy summer, and then a really bad storm comes. The river is flooding. The man's neighbor, who is driving away to save herself and her family, offers him a ride. There is still one space at the back. You can leave with us. But the man turns down. He says, "No, I'm waiting for God to save me." So the neighbor reluctantly drives away. The flood is getting more and more serious. The water is reaching the second floor of the man's house. He's now stranded. Someone in a canoe is paddling by and shouts to him, "Jump in! I can save you!" The man turns down. "No, thanks. I'm waiting for God to save me." The water level continues to rise, and the man is now on his rooftop. A helicopter flies by, and the pilot shouts, "Grab this rope! I'll lift you to safety!" The man turns down. "No, but thank you. I'm waiting for God to save me." The water rises above the rooftop, and the man drowns. In heaven, he meets God, and he says to God, "I had so much faith in you. Why didn't you save me?" God replies, "I sent you a car, a canoe, and a helicopter. What more did you expect?" The law of attraction or other higher power we believe in may be amazing, but they don't take away our basic responsibility to look out for ourselves. How about negative polarity thinking then? What causes it? Negative polarity thinking tends to happen when we focus too much on what is tangible, what is happening in the outside world, what we can see, and forget about the importance of our inner state. Simply put, when we don't have faith, we tend to do negative polarity thinking whenever things go wrong. We don't need to be religious to have faith. Having faith doesn't mean letting our guard down in real life, although people who do positive polarity thinking do make this mistake. In the context of problem facing, having faith simply means trusting at heart that nothing is constant and this too shall pass. Now that we understand polarity thinking, let's look at Headheart thinking. Headheart thinking is where our heart is positive and our head is dealing with the negativity. Instead of being pessimistic or overly optimistic, we become resourceful. The reason Headheart thinking works well is because this is where our head and our heart are doing what they're good at. Our heart works best with positivity because it's uncritical, it accepts everything as true. Our head works best with negativity because it's critical, it can often come up with solutions to counter the negativity. Positivity in heart, negativity in head. This is Headheart thinking. Now, this is really important to know. The head is not negative per se, but is dealing with the negativity by being resourceful and coming up with constructive steps. The smaller third group of people in our world right now is doing this because they have hope in the heart. And at the same time, the head is telling them to take actions to stay safe. Going back to the scenario of losing the job, the person who does head-heart thinking has the equanimity to consider options other than panic job hunting because they have calmed themselves down from the shock of being fired. They might have felt fear too, but if they did, they released it so they can think more clearly and see options that the person who is panic job hunting cannot see. We'll talk about how to deal with negative feelings later in this presentation. Head-heart thinking allows us to maximize our potential because our head and our heart are working in synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So how does the synergy thing work? When we do negative polarity thinking, our head may come up with ways to deal with the negativity, but it's often not functioning as well as it could because the fear from the heart space causes stress, and stress often clouds our judgment. When we do positive polarity thinking, our head is not being constructive at all. When we do head-heart thinking, the critical thinking from our head is being supported by the positive force from our heart. Our head is in full motion and not compromised by stress because it's being fueled by the positivity from our heart. We're less likely to give up even when the ideas from our head don't work because we maintain the optimism from our heart. Just believing positive things will happen in our heart is often not enough. We got to take action. Just taking action without believing is often not enough either because the intention we hold in our mind while we take the actions matters. If we go to a bank to ask for a loan to save our business without believing that our business can be saved, are we likely to persuade the bank manager to loan us the money? Head-heart thinking takes into account the inner state that we need so we can think clearly and take empowered actions. This sounds great, but how do I actually do it? If I'm currently doing polarity thinking, how do I switch into head-heart thinking? It always starts with a decision. Now that we know better, we have a choice. We can consciously choose to do head-heart thinking. And then we can use these methods to help us move into the head-heart thinking space. If we're currently doing positive polarity thinking, ask ourselves these questions. What are people worried about? Might there be a chance that their worries are grounded? What can I do to minimize or avoid it? Even if we don't believe at all that there is a problem, is it worth it just taking the precautions if it happens to be true? Here's a story about a 30-year-old person who died after joining a COVID party. A COVID party is a gathering held by somebody diagnosed with coronavirus to see if the virus is real and to see if anybody gets infected. Just before the patient died, they said to the nurse, "I think I made a mistake. I thought this was a hoax, but it's not." Sometimes the problem won't result in life or death or anything irrevocable. In those cases, we might decide it's not worth it taking precautions because we don't have much to lose anyway. If that's the case, it's fine, as long as it's an informed decision. If we're currently doing negative polarity thinking, we can use the FAST method. When we feel fear, instead of suppressing it because we want to be positive, use the FAST method. Step 1, feel the fear. When we connect with it, we can influence it. Step 2, acknowledge it. It has a positive intention. It wants to protect us. It might not be doing its job very effectively, but it has a good intention. So acknowledge it. When we acknowledge it, we'll also find ourselves releasing the fear. Step 3, send it to the head. The head can deal with negativity well. The negativity triggers the head's critical ability, so it can do step 4, which is translating it into empowered actions. What can we do with what we have from where we stand? Taking empowered actions is like buying insurance. When we have done that, we can remove a source of concern. That's when we release more or even all of the fear. We can use the FAST method for other negative feelings too. If we're feeling annoyed or angry, feel the annoyance or anger. Acknowledge and release it. Send it to the head. Translate it into empowered actions. Let's look at an example of an empowered action. If we're annoyed because somebody broke their promise to us yet again, instead of letting our feeling cloud us and lash out on that person, we can assert ourselves and have a civilized conversation to make sure future arrangements will be acceptable. Asserting ourselves in a civilized manner is an empowered action. Being clouded by our feeling and lashing out on somebody is not an empowered action because it hasn't been processed or translated by the head. If we're feeling guilty, feel the guilt, acknowledge and release it. Send it to the head. Translate it into empowered actions. An example could be making a verbal commitment to do the right thing in the future. If we feel sad, feel the sadness, acknowledge and release it. Send it to the head. Translate it into empowered actions. We feel sadness mainly when there is a loss of some sort. So when that happens, empowered actions might include celebrating the existence and doing something to create closure, like writing a letter to the person whom we might have lost. That person doesn't even need to read it. The letter serves as a closure for ourselves. A thing to note about the FAST method: the release of the negative feeling happens in step 2 when we acknowledge it, and again after we complete the 4 steps in the method. If we apply this method every time we have a negative feeling, we'll find ourselves better and better at releasing, that we may release the feeling to completion without even being aware of it. If you find yourself needing some help to relax or manage your stress or feel better, our hypnosis downloads on petlo.co.uk may help. Hypnosis engages our powerful unconscious mind so we can make changes with the least resistance. Going back to the pandemic, people who are living in fear have allowed the negativity to get to the heart. The negativity corrupted the heart. People who are nonchalant have allowed the positivity in the heart to get to the head. The positivity blinded the head. If our heart is telling us that it's afraid, it's okay, we're human. Acknowledge it, send it to the head, and ask ourselves what we can do. Sometimes it feels so difficult that it feels like there is nothing we can do. But at least don't give up before we even try. Tap into that resourcefulness we all have. Do what we can and let go of the fear as much as possible. So here is the conclusion. In times of difficulty, remember this: don't let concerns get to our heart. There, they turn into fear. Don't let faith get to our head. Otherwise, it becomes recklessness. Thank you.